60.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wow.
Here.
Vernon, okay, Myers, E. Hooker.
Yeah.
Body.
Here.
McLaughlin.
Here.
George.
Here.
One.
Agenda. I move we adopt the agenda and we discuss item 880. For public comment, as well as action items.
Second, Jenna.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay. We can call public comment and so forth.
And we're not gonna deal with the committee, the county committee.
Also, moving discussion item. Sorry about that.
We will use that, but
Whatever it's.
That's an item. Well. To action, to action item. It was. Kate, maybe? Will be behind action item. Do I have a, okay, you make that motion, I'll make that motion. All in favor? And opposed? No. Make those changes. Let's see. At a regular meeting, the board may take action upon the important business not appearing on the posted agenda if, first, the board publicly identifies the item, and second, on the following occurs. The board, by a majority vote of the full board, decides that an emergency as defined in Government Code Section 549-560 exists, or upon a decision by a 2/3 vote of the board, or if less than 2/3 of the board members are present, the unanimous vote of those present. The board decides that there is a need to take immediate action and that the immediate action came to the attention of the district after the agenda was posted, or the item was posted on the agenda of a prior meeting of the board occurring not more than 5 calendar days prior to the date of this meeting. And at the prior meeting, the item was continued to this meeting. Okay, so we will visit discussion item 8 and discussion item 10A prior to going into closed session. So, yeah, let's do Colby first.
Colby, you're up.
David gave me some expert instruction on how to join that, so I'm going to do my best. I've got a presentation I'd like to share with you. David has to let me in. He's here. David. All right, next. Yeah. And it was there. Well, good evening, everyone, and my name is Colby. I'm the Humboldt County Office of Education. I'm the Assistant Superintendent, and I've had the pleasure to speak to many of you about this project that we've been working on for, gosh, about 2.5 years now. And time does seem to be strange in COVID, right? And so part of why I'm here tonight is to share with you an update as far as our Taiwan project, and also some exciting new details. And it's been a while. I think it was summer of 20 when we originally asked all of you, no, 21, excuse me, when we asked all of you if you endorse and support this project. So that's some time ago. So I thought what we do is just do a quick little recap of, the background of this project. Why are we doing this? And then what we hope to do in the coming months and years. Okay, so first of all, in 2019, and by the way, if you could give me an estimate of time, because I can tend to really talk a lot about this. So do I have 10 minutes?
Go for it,
Oh,
at least.
okay, feel free to interrupt me with any questions you might have. So in 2019, I was asked to go to Taiwan to speak at a conference on global education. And while I was there, I had the good fortune to visit a lot of different schools. And many of those schools included parts of indigenous parts of Taiwan. And there's 19 federally recognized tribes in Taiwan. And I was so struck, I immediately called Margot Robbins when I got home. And I said, there seems to be maybe an opportunity to bring kids together in many different ways. But one of those ways is to connect indigenous kids here and indigenous kids there. And so really from 2019 till now, we've been building relationships, not just here in Climate Trinity, but all over Humboldt County. We've gone from 3 classrooms to over 60 classrooms in those last 3 years, developing some really deep relationships and really designed to provide kids opportunities to share their cultures, but also for them to learn other cultures, both similarity and differences. And so when I say there's 16, that's just a quick map. On the right-hand side is California, and of course, and then left-hand side is the island of Taiwan. And the green dot in the center, like the south center of the island, is the tribe that we've primarily been working with. They're called the Joe tribe. All right, so I have this because I like manipulatives, just like any good teacher. I'm going to pass this around. It's a picture of what you see on here. In August, I traveled back to Taiwan where they asked me to, this August, a couple months ago. And by the way, I added some slides. I hope that was okay. I just realized there were some things I forgot that helped tell the story. So if you don't see exactly what you see here, that's fine. So they actually asked me to go back and do a keynote at a conference on global education in August. And while I was there, I continued to build new relationships all over the country. So, just for those of you who haven't seen this picture, and one of the impressions that I had is geographically, the left-hand side obviously is here, and on the right-hand side, that is from a place called Alishan, which is where many of the students that we're working with is. Geographically, it's very similar. That's the principal, and again, right-hand side, that for some reason reminded me a lot of Trinity House, right-hand side. So, in 2020, Margot and Maggie Peters and Phil Alpers and a number of others got together and really started talking about what a cultural exchange could look like. And that's when this idea of bringing those kids together, creating a monthly cadence where each month there would be a thematic meeting, a Zoom meeting. remember, they're 15 hours ahead of us. So there were some challenges because today is tomorrow there. And so you can see on the screen and probably in your packet, those were some of the themes. So we met and we learned a lot of things. One of the things we learned is how important it is to have matched or closely aligned age groups. The kids over in Taiwan tended to trend a little bit, elementary, early junior high school, and the students here were more high school age. So that's presented some engagement challenges, if you will. And then of course, COVID hit and Maggie retired and Maggie moved up to, yeah, you haven't retired yet, Maggie, sorry. Marco retired. Maggie moved up to high school, and we all know with COVID, the reality was our planned trip, the kids would have had to quarantine for 10 days. And I've done that. It's not something any kid should have to do, where you go into a hotel and you can't step outside of the hotel for 10 days. So all the COVID restrictions are now gone entirely. They're basically like us. It's basically manageable. And other restrictions related to travel are no longer in place. So that's good. We also, Maggie and I have been talking about what this, as we unpause this project, what does this look like? And I'm going to invite Maggie to add anything when we get to that part. We also use this opportunity of a pause to find additional funding, because one of our goals is that financial burdens would hinder any kid who's invested in this from going. And we've done that. We've done it. And so also in the process, we said, well, what else can we do with sister school relationships? One of the things that we did is Orleans Elementary School. In August, I went to this elementary school over in Taiwan called Pahuma Elementary. They're part of the Toyan peoples, which is more northern Taiwan. They were the first indigenous charter school in the country. Now there's 37. And that gentleman you see right there is the principal, who's smiling in the front. So we've created a sister school relationship in Ms. Cole and also Andy out there. They're really, and other teachers are starting to do these meetings, virtual meetings, and also they're starting to send sort of tokens, I guess, or letters back and forth. In fact, this morning, I was in Orleans Elementary teaching the kids' first Mandarin lesson, which was really, really fun. They really wanted to learn simple greetings and that sort of. So I'll send this revised version, everyone. So if you want to watch those videos, there's a neat little picture of their first meeting. The students to the right are the students from Taiwan, and the students, some of you will recognize those students, I'm sure, are the students in Amy's class. So the high school. One of the lessons learned is that doing synchronous, like lifetime Zoom, is really difficult when you have 15 hours between them. So we met with Jai Senior High School, Maggie and I in our contacts back in Taiwan, and we met with the administrators and talked about what could a high school to high school relationship look like. And so Maggie, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the projects we?
Sure. We have met a few times with the high school in Taiwan, and we've kind of talked about keeping it open with what the submissions would look like, but they would basically be asynchronous shares electronically. So they could use Google Slides, they could use video, they could use writing, but we really want to infuse like images. And so the first activity that we're planning is to just do like a day in the life of what it looks like to go at our school, what it looks like to attend Hoopa High. And invite them to share like some of our previous events, like kind of going back to like, this is what homecoming is, this is what, this is what our sports programs look like, and really just kind of like share, what it is to be who you are in the school, and targeting submissions from our leadership group. Many of the students in the leadership class were on that original list to be able to participate. And so just kind of infusing that class time so it doesn't take away from their other studies. The synchronous shares became really difficult for us because it was like 8 o'clock in the morning for students in Taiwan, and 4 o'clock in the afternoon for our students, and our students who are involved in sports, you mean like their schedules are just really busy. And also there was this kind of like awkwardness as kids typically can kind of lean towards of just being in a Zoom room together and being like, shy, and so I think the asynchronous will get them to be like out of their shell and be more expressive through an art integrated approach of using photos and videos and that sort of thing. And I'm hoping that we'll get some really good quality projects that we're supposed to kind of do the exchange by Thanksgiving break, like give them that extra time for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so right now there's about 3 projects that are planned before we hope to go to Taiwan. So there's just a couple pictures just so you can kind of get an idea. The gentleman on the left, his name is Professor Hu, and he's one of the tribal elders of the Zhou tribe. This is his house. And the gentleman on the right with the red vest, he is the head of the whole tribe. And so they invited me out to their home where they helped explain the Miasvi Festival, which is the festival that they've invited us to. It's a World New Year Festival. And it's a real special honor that they've done that. Also, when we're there, we don't plan to not see a lot of different things, which includes Taipei, which is the capital city. That building on the right is called Taipei 101. It was designed, modeled after bamboo. So you can kind of probably see that. It used to be the tallest building in the world. It's unbelievably tall. And then on the left is just a quick picture of the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial. On the left-hand side is the National Symphony, and on the right-hand side is the National Museum of Art. So we hope to give the kids a really neat opportunity to see all types of cultures in Taiwan. This is a picture of the National Council on Indigenous Peoples. They heard about the story and they heard that I was going to be there, so that would you come by and present to us a little bit about it. And so I did, and they were so excited. They actually, when we come, they actually want to meet all the kids and they want to host all the kids. And those are representatives from all the major tribes in Taiwan. So there's a draft schedule, and I know this is in there, so I won't go through every little bit. But the idea is we're going to be planning on going for 10 days. And the students, there'll be a chaperone ratio of still 4-to-1. We're anticipating between 20 and 20 students. And I will, of course, be there as the main conduit and speaking Mandarin speaker. And English is not a barrier, especially among the adults. And yeah, there's also a description of the Miasmi Festival. So what does this mean when we get down to brass tacks? What is something like this? So you can see, and I believe this is in your packet, the total trip when we really budget conservatively is about $70,000. On the left-hand side is the number of students and chaperones. You'll see 28 includes the chaperones, 22 is expenses specifically related to kids. On the right-hand side, you'll see total cost, estimated cost. The sponsor, we've been working over the last, in that pause, to find sponsors. The Ministry of Education in Taiwan is going to pay for all lodging and travel while we're in the country. Humboldt County Office of Education is going to pay for 2/3 of the airfare. And so really there's a balance around $400 per student, where we're hoping to find creative ways to maybe perhaps if the student is tribally enrolled, perhaps the tribe could sponsor them or other ideas. So that's kind of where we're at with funding. We're in really, really good shape. You'll see I also even included things like incidentals. Not all kids have, suitcases or cell phones. So we really wanted to budget those things in. So there's constant communication with parents. The kids are well equipped. We're even going to get swag, I guess you'd call it, where brightly colored windbreakers, because we'll be a group. We want to make sure that we can see them at all times, but also they can see us, right? I can tell you that Taiwan is considered to be the safest country in Asia. It's a very tolerant country, and it's one of the most welcoming places I've ever been. So, in fact, I'm giving a presentation in Taipei. So, who's going and how were they selected? As we mentioned, there's been a pivot towards high school age students. And one of the reasons why we wanted to do that is not to leave other kids out. First of all, most of them are high school age also. But the goal is to build sort of a structure to where we have elementary students building friendships, and eventually as they get to high school, they would be better equipped and more familiar with Taiwan and potentially other countries, because this is just one part of the big structure I'm building, that they're going to be better versed and better prepared to take on international travel. You know, originally, some of the students were pretty young. So, but I'm open to that. I really look to Maggie, to the partners out here, because they know the students the best, right? So I'm open to considering different changes, but that's kind of our current best thinking in terms of who's going to be there. Again, we talked about chaperones. Oh, it's really important. This is not a one-off. My goal in building this, and that's why we've gone from 3 to 60, is to build an infrastructure in Humboldt County where every child has the opportunity to make a friend somewhere else in the world. Taiwan, we're using to build these vertical opportunities. And then now I'm already talking to other countries to do the same thing. And by friendship, I don't mean everybody gets to travel to these places, but they get opportunities to see the world from other people's eyes. And it's really, really important. So with that said, we hope to bring these students to hear the following stuff, to have a real cultural exchange, so they get to learn all about our wonderful things. Safety measures. 2 years ago, I presented on this, or a year and a half ago. So JPA insurance, obviously COVID-19 precautions are always on my mind. The student chaperone ratio. We have that bullying identified for students. We'll have communication plans. I met with Phil Alpers earlier, just before I got here. And one of the things we were talking about in December, and maybe twice in December, or once in December and January, we really want to host some potlucks for the parents and the students, so everybody really gets to know one another, so everybody's comfortable. You know, making sure, because it's a big deal for families and kids to go halfway across the world. Okay, so next step, I already talked about additional funding, care packages. We are going to have information nights and passports. So, are there questions or concerns or ideas or things I'm missing? Yes.
I had a concern. My daughter was part of the group the last time it was preparing to go, and there were concerns about invasion from China.
Yes.
All over the news. She
Yes.
saw that and was traumatized. So
Yeah.
how is it that we are monitoring international relations and safety? It sounds outrageous, but
No, it's a really valid concern, and I appreciate you asking that. When Nancy Pelosi flew in, I was in Taiwan, so I'm always on Taiwanese news, always. And so I also have developed close relationships with the American Institute of Taiwan. I know the cultural affairs officer, and so we're in constant communication. Her name is Sharon Haish, and so we have contacts at the embassy. And I probably talk to my Taiwanese counterparts at least every other week. We have formal meetings, so we monitor those things. I can tell you just from my own personal experience, when I was there, this dynamic between mainland China and Taiwan has existed for 70 years. It recently, with Nancy Pelosi traveling over there, it clearly was heightened. There's no question about that. But being there was not a sense among the people, at least that I was with, and I was with a lot of different people who are government types and school types. There wasn't a sense of alarm. I never felt unsafe. And I know this is just my personal experience, but as far as geopolitically, I've looked at it. Certainly, I'm not ready to go to the full history of Taiwan and China, but the dynamic, that particular one, if you look at, if you don't mind me, I will go a little deeper into it, but the economy of mainland China is on the brink not Taiwan, but on the brink of some pretty serious things. There's a financial crisis, there's a housing boom, and also you had the recent re-election, I'm putting that in quotes, of Xi Jinping. And so Xi Jinping was recently re-elected, and oftentimes geopolitically, when countries have sort of authoritarian tendencies, you see that pop up in sort of nationalistic ways. And mainland China, from their perspective, look at Taiwan as a historic appendage of mainland China, right? Well, Taiwan technically has never been part of mainland China politically, not since I think the Ming Dynasty about 400 years ago. So the mainland Communist Party, they have never ruled over them. They're not a breakaway province. In fact, what happened in 1949, again, tell me if I'm going too long. What happened in 1949 is the nationalists under Sun Yat-sen and Chiang Kai-shek, they lost the Civil War. The Chinese Communist Party took over mainland China, and about 2 million Han Chinese moved to Taiwan, the nationalists, and with them brought all their cultural relics. So there's a huge concentration that was really safe in the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s, where modern Chinese or ancient Chinese culture was sort of systematically destroyed. And so Taiwan really represents both a modern Asia, but also contains many of the relics from a very traditional China. So I know that was a pretty long answer. I can tell you that I would not even be suggesting that we think about going on a trip like this unless I felt in my heart that kids would be safe. I would take my kids, and actually my whole family is going to be going to Asia this weekend. We're leaving for a vacation. And so while there's no guarantees in life, the Western media, meaning our media, they get money when eyeballs are on screens. And much of that was, I guess much of that was maybe a profit motive. There's still an issue, obviously, but when I was there, I didn't sense a panic or impending invasion from the people that actually live there and that have been living in the shadow for 70 years. When I watched, the only reason why I saw all of what was happening is because of Western media, right? So I don't know if that addresses your question. The geopolitics is a real thing. I'm not going to suggest that it isn't, but I don't see any evidence or anybody saying that invasion is impending. Partially that has to do with the Chinese military, partially it has to do with, remember, those 2 million people, those are ethnic Chinese. And so it would be like fighting their brothers, right? And so there's politics everywhere. Does that answer your question? I'd be happy to talk with any of you at length or any parents about that particular issue, because it's an important one. Yes?
What date are you proposing to go?
So February 18th through February 27th.
And how many total students?
It will be approximately 20 to 22 students. And then there will be 6 chaperones, including myself. The ratio, we want to make sure that there is a extra chaperone, if you will, because if a kid gets sick and they need to stay at the hotel, or if the chaperone, another chaperone gets sick and they need to stay at the hotel, that they'll be backup at all times.
Okay. And looking at this budget,
Yeah.
I'm reflecting back and the board originally approved this,
Yes.
and we approved it pending with the caveat that no district funds be spent. And yet we have KT Indian Ed on the line for 9,000.
Okay.
And that's a heavy hit to their budget. And I don't know how it got on here, but the board did pass a resolution at that time
Okay.
that as long as no KT, none of our district funds.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if they were assuming Indian Ed is not district funds, but
Yeah, I'm sorry, that may be an omission. I'm happy to take that off and redirect that. That number originally got on there. When Margaret was talking about contributions, she had mentioned that the KT Indian Ed department could cover that food cost, that incremental food cost. But But that being said, we're happy to take that off and try and find it.
There may be a difference of an opinion of the board now, but I just wanted to bring that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. So, would you like, I mean, I guess would you like me to take that out? Or-
So we need to, what do we need to do here tonight? Do we need to approve the revised trip or?
I thought it was a discussion item. Or is it an action item?
Okay, it was discussion.
Is it supposed to be an action item?
No, it was just discussion primarily because we've gone through 2 Indian Ed directors since Margot.
Yeah,
So we may have a difference of opinion, not sure yet if you've contacted Erica or Erica.
Eric and I, sorry, hi, Erica. Eric and I met yesterday and I gave her the full background
Yeah.
of the story. So of course, I'm happy to defer whatever, obviously, the decision is. We can identify potentially other areas to cover that, including one of those things I could reach out to the ministry about to see if that's possible.
Do you have an opinion at this time, Erica, that you'd like to share?
Sure. So Colby and I were able to speak yesterday morning, and he shared a lot of pictures and a lot of good things that I think I had some pretty major concerns when I first learned about the trip. I still have some concerns for sure. I think international travel, I traveling with any students anywhere definitely it's a big deal, right? Whether we're going to the coast or out of the state or anywhere. So I do have some concerns in that area. I was a little concerned, especially about the age group. So knowing that maybe we are focusing on some older students, that does ease some of my concerns, because on the original list that I saw, I think we had some 6th graders who are probably now 7th grade. So that's a possibility, but I do know that some of those students from that original list, in their minds, they're getting approval tonight to go, including those students that are younger. So I do think that some probably hard conversations are going to have to happen at some point, or who is going to be that decision maker that tells the families and the students that did whatever I think they had to submit an essay or a project or something describing what culture meant to them and why they wanted to go on this trip. So, and I spoke to a parent even just today, and she's like, oh, well, my daughter is not in high school, but she's on the list, she's going. And things might be changing, I'm not sure. So there's kind of a lot of details and I think technicalities that still need to be explored. I shared with Colby just some of my experiences in traveling internationally and what that's like, especially I think as Indigenous people traveling to other Indigenous communities and going through things like customs and what kind of things you can take or not take, and that risk that we run when we do that. So we have even talked about wearing hair sticks to a courthouse, right? Like you can't really easily do that. Or if you do it, you have to find sneaky ways to go about it. So if we're taking things with us to exchange in that, I think we have to be very, very mindful of what that looks like and how that looks. And then I think, I'm happy that you have felt very safe and welcomed, and I'm sure it is all of those things. But I also think that we have to also recognize that there's a difference of a heterosexual Caucasian male traveling internationally versus other students that may not fit that characteristic. So just there's pieces. Is Billy still here? Billy, do you happen to know if it was coming out of the curriculum revenue?
Yes,
or where
it was
curriculum possibly coming from? Yeah.
Yes.
So I think maybe that's how it was rationalized, that it wasn't actually like district funds, it was like revenue that the program was bringing in. And so I think that's my understanding of where that funding came from. I'll stop after this. But I will say that I'm so excited that you were able to travel and to see these places and be excited about things like Indigenous charter schools and seeing things that are like trilingual everywhere, that has Chinese and their native languages and other languages. And so that's wonderful that we can appreciate those things abroad but then also how do we like do that here? And so how, if the county is willing to like invest in all of this funding to go and to see and to share all of these amazing things, but then how do we also like monetize that for us here too? Because I think we have the capacity to do it. It just becomes a different kind of prioritization that the, like probably their national, you know, Secretary of Education views things in that way and has prioritized it, where here that's not really the case. So just trying to build on those relationships and hearing that it's not a one-time shot is really, I think, important too, because I've definitely been a part of some cultural exchanges that did not go well. And they did go well between like the actual relationships that were built, but the way in which it was facilitated felt very touristy, colonial, all of those scary things that I want to make sure we're not doing if we send students.
Yeah.
So
Erica, thank you. I really appreciate that. And one of the things I've been trying to be really mindful of is not just to do the touristy thing. These kids are not going to be going to some big old shopping mall. I mean, they're teenagers, so they're going to want to do, you know, teenager stuff. But also, the part of the reasons why I go there is to develop relationships. Professor Pooh, who I showed you a picture of, he has a farm, and he invited me to his farm. And it was 3 hours into the mountains, and we spent a lot of time there. And so the students are going to get to see how people live in Taiwan. And I'm very mindful of that, and I'm very grateful for Erica to where she's in right now to bring up these kinds of things that through my lens I don't necessarily see. So, thank you, Erica.
Do you happen to know how many of the chaperones on your list are teachers or principals at our school, and what kind of impact that would leave when they all go to Taiwan?
Yeah, absolutely. So Maggie as the principal, myself, but I'm not an employee. Phil Alpers is still interested. I'm reaching out to Margot to see if she's still available. And then we would just need to finalize who the additional chaperones would be.
The other chaperones that were originally invited were Billy and Nation Richards and Tyler Mitchell. And Nation and Tyler both have like they both have international traveling experience, and that's kind of why they surfaced, and they are involved in programs that directly serve students at the high school.
So I
They're
think,
not employees.
so Maggie, you are the only employee that is going. I'm
We were-
concerned again about a number of things. So we are short of subs, and with our original thing, not to charge, the district wouldn't have any financial
And
impact.
now we're paying for everybody's subs because they're going to put school related on their leave docs, and they're going to say this is a school related trip,
And that comes out of our district.
and that's
funds.
not even in here
But we only have Maggie so far
That's what I'm wondering.
unless Billy goes.
But I also think that you need to look at who you select as your chaperones, because if you're doing an indigenous cultural exchange, you want to be sure that your chaperones understand what that means and have something to share or are able to guide in that process. So I kind of think maybe you need to reevaluate that and do some adjustments.
Those were just the ones that were on the original approved chaperone list, so we didn't want to make any changes, that the board would have to reconsider.
Weren't you on the list, Josie? I thought I saw your name before and your children.
Everett has graduated and then joined it.
Well, so people have graduated, they're still on the list, right?
So when we were kind of looking at who might be coming, we just, as Erica said, we just kind of put a pause on, let's see if we can go before we start talking to families and students. I have access to high school students. So in the original list, I found it very difficult working at the elementary school and trying to get high school kids to participate in an exchange. Now I have access to them as the principal of the high school, and I can work with them to be engaged in this exchange, prior to going. And so now I don't have access to the elementary school students that were going. And I certainly don't have access to students who have graduated.
I would
Um,
suggest that you don't try to hold on to your old plan. I think that things have changed. You have students that have graduated, you have students that are younger. And I think that we need to reevaluate this and not try to do this really quick and say, we want some information right now, or we want a board approval right now. Because I'm hesitant. And the reason that I'm hesitant is because of politics.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have control over that.
Right.
I understand.
Yeah.
You're also approaching us because we're an Indigenous community, right? But because we're an Indigenous community, we understand the very real effect of politics. So I think that this is something that we all need to take a second and think about.
Absolutely.
And I would like to see a proposal that isn't linked to what we did before or what we had intended to do. I don't think that in presenting, these are the chaperones that we're going to use. It's not applicable. It's not relevant because those students aren't here and you don't have access to them. So I think that you need to start over.
And I think we were kind of hoping to get a permission giving to do that, because there was also kind of like a feel as though, this is the group that was intended to go, and this is the group you have to kind of stick with. And so I appreciate that kind of ability to work more with what we have access to as far as, but we do know that Tyler and Nation are still very, available and wouldn't impact.
Well, I'm sure that they're available, but I'm not sure that they are the ideal people to do this. Whether they are or they aren't, I don't know. But what I'm saying is that I would hope that you would reevaluate your situation and say, this is what's going to work for this moment and not what worked then. That's just my thought. Now, you guys might have a different opinion of that. I don't know, but
They're
when I'm
both
hearing
have
it,
been-
I'm saying we
Yeah.
can't approve something that has students that have graduated, that has students that are in 6th grade, that has these people that we don't know, that has these people that don't have any affiliation with the school, right? I understand we don't want to be sending teachers, but we do want to be sending people that we know or people that have contact with our kids. So if JLM has tutors that work with our kids every day, that have culturally relevant information that they can share, then utilize them. That's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
But I'm not even saying that I support the idea, but I'm just saying I don't like this proposal that's coming forward.
Okay, well, I'm not really kind of, I will take that, but I just want to let you know that Tyler Mitchell has coaching experience at our school, and so does Nation too. So it's like they work for Yurok Tribe and they work for Trio, and they also are coaches at our school. So they do have a lot of access to our students, but certainly we can have more, individuals on staff or more individuals in the community, if that's what the board is looking for.
Actually, I disagree with you very nicely, but because I do appreciate this. I really did like the chaperones that were chosen to go on that first trip, and they are, fellow Albers is very culturally.
I'm not saying they're not. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is you need to reevaluate this and make sure that it's relevant for this group.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I don't have a problem with who did you say that it was?
Tyler Mitchell is the
Tyler
Yurok
Mitchell.
tribal jail, like
Okay.
he is state,
And that's
his
what I
office
just
is right next to
Right,
mine.
that's what I just suggested,
Yeah.
tribal tutors. I don't know who these people are, but
Okay.
I'm not comfortable with the proposal of that's so random. I feel like before it's brought to us, it needs to be thought out and it needs to be presented completely.
Okay, so I'm just looking for what's missing. Is it a list of students that are missing?
We don't have a list of students. We don't have a list of chaperones.
You don't have a process, right?
Well, there's an itinerary. So before, when we had like, this is what needs to be approved for for overnight field trips or out of state travel, it was like, here's an itinerary. We need an itinerary and like a method of travel, and then chaperones and a list of students. But in this particular case, it's, the sequence of events was a little cloudy for us because we wanted to make sure that before we get a lot of kids excited about going on the trip again, that we had board approval for the trip, and we can come back with the list once it is solidified. But the kids right now would be, now that the permission, I feel like there's permission giving to focus on the kids that we have access to in the high school, they would be students that come out of the leadership class or students that were on the original list that are high school students.
What is the process for choosing the students? Because that's been a concern of the board on a number of things, on trips throughout the year. How are these students being chosen? And is it a variety of students for different activities, other than this, so.
So the leadership class are all students who represent each grade level and have,
I don't need to know it now. I need to know part of
Yeah, and
the
that's what I'm saying.
process.
Also about the chaperones. We don't need the names of them, but we need to know that there's a process of how they're being selected.
and I would say that I wasn't a part of the original process. You know what I mean? Like, do you know how the chaperones?
We don't need to discuss. We have a lot of
No problem. It's so
It's
like,
not a criticism, it's just a more information.
I had a question before we move to the next.
thank you.
Is there a timeline at by which this has to be done to facilitate the whole thing?
Well, thank you for that question. I'll answer it backing up because I know we've taken a lot of your time. But there are logistical things like making sure students have passports. Those are tied to timelines. So there are things that are dependent on a particular decision, but I'm happy to work with Maggie and others to really develop. I think I heard you loud and clear for what you're looking for. So we can do that and either bring it back to the December one, still backing up to the December one, or we can send it to you before.
Okay, thank you, Colby.
Really appreciate it all your
Coming out
time.
here,
Yeah,
helping
no
us.
questions. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Kind of move on to game and we're understanding. Nobody can hear me.
So I've asked Chief Ramos to come tonight because we have before us a memorandum of understanding between his department and the town of Trinity Joint Unified School District, which we had a couple of meetings to discuss prior to bringing it to the board. We have a need, to partner with the Hooper Valley Tribal Police Department in areas such as ammunition training. School funding's not allowed, can't buy bullets and run out and buy some guns and equip our guys, which is exactly what we want. So when you partner with an agency like the Hooper Valley Tribal Police, where all the conditions to become a Hooper Tribal Police officer, non-cross deputized, but just a regular officer, are some of the same requirements that we have working as our safety officers. So it seemed like a natural blend, although there's some, and Willie is going to speak up in his turn when it's after, Chief Ramos's turn about how we feel this document is. So please inform us about the MOU.
Good evening. My name is Rolando Ramos, the new police chief. I've been here about 7 months. Just before I begin, I do want to say that if you need volunteers to go to time, I'm volunteering.
Background check.
Aside from that,
Cultural desk.
the reason for the MOU, when I first got here, I had noticed that there were a couple of gentlemen walking around carrying weapons. One was Will, who was a security officer. He's a school resource officer and also the security officer for the courts. I looked into it, I read the ordinance and some of the things, and it caused me to have pause, right? For me, being a police chief is not just a matter of running my police department, but it's also the security and safety of the whole valley, right? The whole tribe. And so having these gentlemen walk around with weapons and not knowing what authority they had, what jurisdiction they had, what safety precautions were there in place for them in case of an incident where they had to use their weapons. I began to look into this, and I've been working on this, how long? Like since this June or May. I was working on this with the previous superintendent, trying to get this in place because it provides a better mechanism to provide better safety for the school resource officers, number one, right? They need support, especially if you look around the country with all the school shootings, and I don't like to talk about that because it's, those are critical incidents. But it's important to know that we have someone there that can communicate with the police department immediately. One of the parts of the MOU is that they carry a radio and they're in communication with our dispatch. All right, so in case of a critical incident, we can quickly communicate, we know where they are, and we can respond. Also, in terms of training and having a certification, we included a minimum requirement certification that gives them use of force, right? California use of force policy, probable cause, and also firearm certification. And I didn't want to extend that type of training because it's a week and a half type training, gives them a certification where they understand use of force and are able to carry a weapon. To extend that farther into a recertification, I didn't think it was unnecessary because that's for police officers. But what we have here, I believe the what is it, 836 training, 832 training was enough to provide that certification for the officers. And then I also wanted to include them in our twice yearly firearms training. So they're scheduled when we are scheduled, they're scheduled with us so that they're part of our department. I wanted to create an umbrella for the tribe. And that only includes, like I said, the school resource officer, but it's also the security officer for the courts. So I'm trying to expand that umbrella to include individuals that are experienced, because Will is a prior officer, prior chief here in the Valley, but also experienced individual that understands protocols and on all the things that I'm trying to push forward here. All right. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I really appreciate the collaboration between the police department and the school resource officers. There's one piece in the MOU that is it's in the page 144 independent contractor. It says the school resource officer shall not to be considered an agent or employee of the school district and is not entitled to participate in any pension plans, insurance, bonus, or similar benefits school district provides employees. That piece,
I'm sorry, what section is that?
it's number 10.
Oh, 10, okay.
Independent contractor, and that goes to the next page.
Independent contractor.
Yeah, it's right at the bottom of the page.
That is something that was not, I didn't add
Okay,
that.
what?
We think we might have the wrong, I copied the one you sent me just
Yeah,
recently.
I don't know where that came from.
Well, what's this?
Oh, okay. That had nothing, I didn't add that. I don't know.
Yeah. So that needs to be corrected because on tonight's agenda also, we have a new board policy regarding our school safety officers. And we have established a school safety department. And we did advertise, we did interview, we did pay, we do pay. They are employees of the district. The old policy, this would have come right in line, and maybe whoever drafted this was looking at our old policy. So anyway, and that's my only concern is that we change that section to make sure.
Yeah, there were a number, I'm looking at it now, there were a number of parts that were added to this that I didn't include.
So.
I don't know. That's what
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
was gonna say.
Independent contractor, the insurance part,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know where that came from. Did a lawyer, one of the
this-
lawyers look at this and add that?
This came from the legal department and they looked at an old MOU. Because none of this was,
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't
it's not
know.
the right, this is not the right one. So,
interest with that,
We could table it to the.
table it until the 14th.
Yeah.
We'll have you come back with the right
I'm sorry,
document.
okay.
No, that.
Yeah, this,
And I'm-
no,
No, that is.
I will clarify this, that's not the MOU I got introduced into that.
So we'll put you on the 14th,
Okay.
and we'll talk about it.
Your question here.
Right document.
I just wanted to make sure that you build standards.
No, we don't have a problem with one section. Why don't you just say which section that, what it was referring
It
to?
wasn't in the original.
It wasn't individual, it was from this one.
It was from this one.
Yeah, so that's, now we
Yeah, all
can,
that's.
Yeah.
It's like you would be responsible for all his overtime or something for calls and.
There's one section I added. I'll see.
Okay, so we're gonna correct it. And I'll call you.
It'll be shorter next time.
Yeah.
I really want to appreciate the collaboration.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
You guys gotta read it before it goes out in the packet.
It would be, excuse me.
I am very close to my mind about.
Get mad at it.
Okay. Time limits generally, minute per speaker, 20 minutes per subject will be imposed by the board president. The board president may rule on the appropriateness of a topic. The topic would be more suitably addressed at a later time. The president may indicate the time and place when it should be presented. The board shall not prohibit public criticism of any policies, procedures, programs, services, acts, or missions as outlined in Government Code Section 54954.3. In addition, the board may not prohibit public criticism of district employees. Whenever a member of the public board president shall inform the complainant that in order to protect the employee's right to adequate notice before for a hearing of such complaints and charges, and also to preserve the ability of the board to legally consider the complaints or charges in any subsequent evaluation of the employee. It is the policy of the board to hear such complaints or charges in closed session unless otherwise requested by the employee pursuant to Government Code Section 54957. The board president shall also encourage the complainant to file a complaint using the appropriate district complaint procedure. And do I have any comments on closed session items?
Carmen,
On a closed session item?
I believe so. I'm not sure if that was the correct one to put, but I guess it would be,
Read it. Good point.
Oh, 3A, yes, that would be it.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Carmen Benson, so I'm here as a concerned parent of a fourth grade student at Valley Elementary School. As most of you may be well aware that Paige Majolan will be resigning from his position as a fourth grade teacher. And I guess my concern here is, as far as we are aware, there isn't a plan in place to fill that void when he vacates his position come a week's time. So I guess my question to the school administration, to the superintendent, to the school board is, what is the plan moving forward with, filling that void? I do know that, we are on shortage of teachers and educators. But what
are we gonna do so that our children don't fall through the cracks? I mean, these previous 3 years have been very hard on our children and their education. And I see it myself and my daughter, sorry, I'm just what are we doing to make sure that they don't fall farther behind? You know, the COVID has definitely played a big impact in our children's education. And I just, you know, there's 7 months left of the school year. You know, that's a lot of time. I just don't want them to, or her and the other children to suffer because, you know, we don't have a plan for this. So, I mean, I'm very grateful, you know, Paige teach me when I was in 6th grade and he was, you know, made a big impact on me. And I know he has made a big impact on my child, and I'm at least grateful that he's still going to be here to advocate for our children. So I guess my main question is, you know, to everybody, what are we going to do, you know, to continue their, you know, and make sure that they get the best education possible and that they don't fall farther behind. Because as far as I know, there isn't a plan in place yet.
And have you brought your question to the administrators at your site prior to coming to here?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if I need to do that too, I will. But
So I'll answer just in a couple of things. So when we become, you know, an emergency situation, which we will when Paige gets sworn in next month, we have a couple of options. You know, we have a new sub on site that we could pull that says, hey, instead of just subbing on a daily basis, we could put you in there, or I could pull one of my SFA teachers. I don't want to have to do that because I'm, you know, obligated to try to, you know, run a reading program. But if I had to, I might have to do that. So I have a couple of things that I could do in a pinch. Are they the best interest of your child? They're the best decision I can make at this time with dealing with the qualified people that I have. Mr. Matilton.
Yes, you have great ideas and possible solutions. May I try to say that a transition take place? I'm 15 days away. It would be great to have that person in class tomorrow to transfer the baton, so to speak, to have me leave on December 2nd. 3rd, 4th, and December 5th, your proposed staff members to take over. There's a rapport issue that could happen. I ask that you consider acting on this as immediate, as soon as next week, so we can have a transition in place. So the kids can build rapport before I depart. And
Assuming Dr. Campbell doesn't have any other ideas up his sleeve, then yes, I will proceed ahead.
my concern is leaving and your proposal, I think, could be detrimental to that class with no rapport being built, no transition happening. So the key is transition.
Duly noted.
So,
About dying.
do we have any more comments on?
You back her up, do it. Yeah.
Donna, are your comments on anything closed session or are these for open?
Well, one is proposed, I'm concerned also because I have a grandson that's in Davis class. And he doesn't know what's gonna happen to him. And I think we really need to look at that. I've been thinking about with all the changes and what we don't have, what we're lacking, is not looked at like it should be. They don't know. We have a lot of trauma students that somehow gets into Paige's class. And I think we need to start looking at the history of our students and what they've been through and how he helps them. And now they don't even know who their next person is that's going to be helping them. There's it's just I have another question, but it's nothing on here. Another thing I want to talk about, but I think The main thing that we have to look at is, like you said, the transition and visit that classroom and see how many of the students have went through so much trauma already. And this is just not healthy. It's very, very scary to me. What's gonna happen to our kids. And when they feel safe and now they don't know if they're safe. So that's all I have to say. And we should have been having this conversation a few months ago. And board, I'm not talking at Jennifer. But this board that's gonna be walking away or whatever, you know, I'm not gonna be here anymore. I think you guys dropped the ball and not put enough effort in getting something moving for this classroom. And again, here we are in a hurry up situation. We really have to do it very well. That's all I have to say. I'm talking at, you know, we have to start. I would like to see our board members walk through the classrooms at least once a month to see what these kids go through. Sometimes I get 8 kids to 10 kids that I, you know, come to my house because they have no place to go because it's the after school program, and I'll talk about that later. But I see, you know, that these babies need some really TLC, and we need to start looking at our students. We have probably the majority of our students that have been through a lot of trauma. So what else can you say? What could be worse than that?
Dr. Kimball, do you have anything to add to this? Any plans or anything that you?
That was what I was hoping, is that in his report that he would be responding to this in some way, would have, you know, something.
I'm hearing the community's concerned by now.
Okay.
That we had plans to cover the class, but our goal has always been that there would be somebody hired to fill the position. And that we wouldn't just be rearranging staff.
Right.
And trying to fill a temporary problem. So.
Thank you. Naomi, do you have a comment on 3A?
I do. So I have a student that's also in Page's class that I am concerned about. She feels stable. She learns every day. She's flourishing. I don't want her to go in a possibly already overcrowded classroom. And giving not that attention, because he really does a good job spreading his attention out to all the students in his class. And I don't want somebody like a sub to come in, here's some Xerox, do this. She reads really well, she spells really well. I feel like just throwing anybody in there could potentially keep her from growing. You know, he was my son's teacher. One of my children has very bad anxiety, and having a stable, everyday person there really helped. It's out of control now, but still, it was there. You know, in 4th grade, it was awesome. It was there, and help our kids. If your kids were in 4th grade, and you knew this long-standing teacher was leaving with no plan, what would you do? They need help.
Thank you. Teresa, you have a comment on 3B?
Well, I just want to ask the school board
and our superintendent to just have an open mind about salaries for sub fees. This kind of piggybacks what's going on with this substitute teacher that will be asked to come in. That we look at salary schedules, we look at salary pay for substitute teachers. So that we could like gain some interest here at our school. There's been a comment made that our school has the highest rate of absenteeism for staff. And that may be true because after all, we are the largest school in the district for classified and certificated staff. Teachers in a normal year get hit in the fall with everything the kids can bring in, bad colds, stomach flus, strep throat. And we've heard since September, all of these things are going around. Plus COVID. When I looked at the Kimau COVID output that they put out earlier this week, 52 active cases. We all know that once a person in the household or relative is diagnosed with COVID, nobody bothers to go to Kimau anymore and put submitting children to COVID tests if they can help it. Because after all, someone in the household has it. And if somebody else comes down with it, then it's automatically assumed everybody must have COVID. Well, teachers are still trying to dodge that bullet, and we haven't been very successful. I'm probably one of the few teachers that try to wear a mask, but still I'm not good at that. I don't like it. But just, be cognizant that I would throw out a percentage that 95% of leave docs that are submitted are based on sick leave in some way, shape, or form, whether it's, I recently have had to take leave personally, it's dental leave and it's pre-COVID. It's my dentists are just now getting to my root canals that were pre-COVID. And so that's not to downplay my regular health care. That I have to keep up with. So, that I'm just an example, and I try really hard to get my leave late in the day on on the days that we have off and stuff, but that's not always accommodating. So I just want you to know we're not derelict in our duties. We care very much. We know what's going to happen if we're not on that day. We don't know what's going to happen with our kids if we're not in on that day. And we care very sincerely about what's going to happen to our students. So I just want you to know that we are cognizant of that. And we don't just take leave just for the heck of it. That's never been, I don't know if that's ever been really a legitimate excuse for leave amongst my peers at my site. It's always been taken, very seriously when we request leave. Just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Well said. It's insulting. It's insulting to have a leave doc question. It's insulting to a teacher to do that.
Thank you. We will look at the session.
I have a question, just, I need to talk about the after school program. Do I wait until you guys come back, or do I talk about it now, or?
That would be like when we come back in for open session.
Okay.
Where they said it's not on the
I have one question for Teresa. I just want to ask you to throw out a number of what you feel like is an amount that's fair.
Oh, as far as, well, recently.
For the sub day, that's what I.
Well, I'm not negotiating, I'm asking what's the fair.
Can I answer it? Can I answer it for us?
You're gonna say 250?
No,
Okay, go ahead.
you've been paying administrators and stuff for you lately. That's the mark right there. You got some high-end subs going right. I don't know what the value is.
I would get paid, son.
I think it's almost.
No, but you're being paid to sell.
But if I have the kids and teachers class, don't the teachers get a portion of the survey?
What
I
I've
didn't
been
know
hearing,
you that.
correct me if I'm wrong, what I've been hearing is when you have to cover, you can't do your administrative duties.
Yeah.
So you're being paid administrative duties, so. So essentially, you get paid.
Don't go away.
Even if you're doing that little stuff there, it's still.
Those administrative duties do go away, because when we have impacts at your site and we need you and you're not available, they're physical. Or you can come back. So they are.
Late nights after.
$20